Simplicity and coherence are a big goals for us next year. Continuing to make sure that things just feel really coherent, that things aren't all over the place, right? How do you make sure that the message is staying on point? These are our two kind of main documents to start the school year. We try to make sure that we come back to this every staff meeting. We try to frame it like not everybody is holding everything.
Welcome to Principal Office Hours, where we swear there's no detention slip waiting for you. Just real talk from real principals who survived everything from budget apocalypses. New school year is almost here, and as we all get ready our preparations, get our staff ready, how do we start the year on a strong note? We speak to a high school principal today about how he's been using data to ground himself and his team to prepare for the new school year so that they can hone in on their priorities. He was gracious enough to share some of these plans and how he structured those priority sessions and goals, and how he put together a 6-week plan for his entire school to be able to start the year on a strong note. So stay tuned for this and more in the rest of this episode. Our guest today is in his 7th year as an administrator in his district. He's originally from Eugene, Oregon, and he has taught in New York City, Hawaii, and Portland. It's so great to have Joseph Blasher in our studios today. He's the principal of Castlemont High School in Oakland, California. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And do they call you Blasher affectionately in school?
Yeah, sometimes affectionately, sometimes with less affection, but yeah, a lot of just last name, drop the mister.
Very nice. I'm so glad to have you with us on the show today. Tell us a little bit more about Castlemont and the students, the community that you serve, and more about the school.
Yeah, Castlemont High School is an amazing place. It has so much spirit and character to it. This is my 6th year here. I was here for 3 years as an instructional coach and then as an assistant principal. And then I left for a few years to go to middle school. And I returned now as a principal in my 3rd year. And it's just a place that I feel so at home. It has students doing amazing things. We have amazing teachers. We also have an interaction with all of the social ills. Deep East Oakland, where we're situated, has experienced all the things from gentrification and poverty and just all of the things that you can imagine in trauma-informed space. But the resilience of our families, of our students, of our staff, just make it a place that feels very meaningful to be. So I was honored when I got the opportunity to return to Castlemont and serve in this role, to continue to work with just so many different community partners doing so many amazing things to improve the lives of students and help students just figure out all the amazing things that they're capable of. So yeah, we are a smaller sized high school for Oakland. We have about 800 students, 750 to 800. We serve a lot of students just in our community. We also serve students that are international, like newcomer students that are coming in from Guatemala, Honduras, and we have specific programming to support them and do a lot of work to really integrate all the different cultures and ideas here. So we have a large Latino or Latinx population, a large African-American population, and then we have a smaller Yemeni, Arabic-speaking population, and a really awesome, beautiful, growing Polynesian population here at Castlemont.
That's super cool. It sounds like a really diverse community. And like right now, you guys are preparing for graduation, and I know it's all exciting and everything. And what are some of the emotions that you're seeing? And I know when listeners hear this, it's going to be a little bit past, but right now, what are you feeling? And what's the general mood in the school?
Oh, and for all the teachers, principals, educators out there, they know all of the emotions packed into a few weeks. Lots of joyful laughter, celebrating, applause for students getting all these scholarships, accepting roles in different colleges or taking these jobs. Lots of tears of joy, as well as tears of students and people that didn't quite make it to the finish line, that weren't able to overcome some obstacles, unfortunately. There's anger, there's frustration, there's joy, there's all of the things are packed in. On top of that, it was just the fatigue of the marathon of a school year. I can't think of any one particular emotion. It's all the things from one moment to the next, and really just trying to make sure you're present to enjoy it as much as possible and be present and work with people to see try and anchoring in the beautiful things that are coming up. But also this is the time of really deep reflection. We're looking at lots of data. We're talking to students and staff, people that are returning, people that are not returning next year. looking at reading data, looking at student surveys, looking at essays, looking at attendance data, suspension data, trying to really be informed so that while things are still really present and top of mind, that we're planning out so that we come back in August or really mid-July when we come back from break, that we already know what our focus is, we already know what our priorities are, and we can just pick up the work and not have to spend more time trying to look through the data and figure out what are we going to do this year.
Yeah,
So
that
amidst all of the joyful, tough celebrations and the final projects and presentations that are coming up, you're also really trying to like make sure that you're preparing yourself and you know what you need to do for next school year.
yeah. I'd imagine that for many in education, like this is the highlight, right? Like feeling all the things, making that very discrete, like progression to the next year. This is it. And one of the joys of being an administrator is you have to be in the moment, but you also get to think ahead, right? And
Yeah.
set the scene for next year, is exactly as you said. So looking through that data, what is it that you are doing like right now that's preparing you for the future, the upcoming academic year? And how are you thinking about staging that over the next few months? Especially at this stage, you have to balance is your teachers are also exhausted. They've just ran this marathon.
Yep.
And they don't necessarily see it as their role almost to be crunching these numbers and going through all of them. So you
Yeah.
have to strike that balance between telling enough of that story so that they get it, but
Yep.
at the same time, like not putting it on them to have to figure out like what to do with it. How do you think about structuring this conversation? And maybe that's something that's ongoing. And like,
Yeah.
how do you structure this conversation and tell this story with data?
We want to present things in a very manageable, bite-sized way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And fast forward to those few weeks before school and the initial, say, 4 to 6 weeks after school starts. How are you approaching that time? Like right now, what's your
Yeah.
plan? And maybe
Yeah.
what was your plan last year? How did that roll out? And then how is that adjusting your plan this year?
Yeah. It is a complex web. I love gardening and love farming. I worked as a farmer when I was in Hawaii for a little bit when I was teaching out there. And I often think of education in schools as an ecosystem. And you need to think about the different things that grow well together. Where do you need to add a little bit more sunlight or whatever the nutrient or resource is? And where do things need to be pruned back? And so I really try to think of how the different systems integrate and support each other, or where there's like conflict, where things actually need to be moved a little bit around. And so with that in mind, like that's some of the work you're doing from January to May. And so right now what we're doing is honing in on our main priorities. And that's the biggest problem for all admin I know is that everything is a priority, right? But that defeats, that's not what a priority means. And so some of that comes with working with your staff and making sure, hey, attendance is a big deal, right? We still want to make sure how are we engaging people in classrooms and bringing them into the space. And so we have our 6-week plan that we've developed, and we have a 6-week plan we've been using the last 3 years. And so at this point, we've created a lot of institutional knowledge. Like we know we have our back to school nights in the 3rd week of school to engage families and show them all the cool projects that they're going to get into. We launch our after school program in the 2nd week of school. So we have these things that are meant to attract students' attention into the space. So we have this 6-week plan. In the 4th week, we make sure we go over expectations again. And so we have these plans where you have your attendance line. And these are the things that we're doing each week that teachers do, that students do, and families do. And so that's how we break down the categories to support attendance and engagement in those first 6 weeks. And then we have a similar thing that our next big goal is going to continue to be literacy. We've made awesome growth, but we want to get to the point where all of our students leave here reading at grade level. It's really simple, but it's a fundamental human right and something that we all feel collectively feel the urgency around. If we can make sure that people have these really fundamental skills, critical thinking, writing with evidence, all these other things fall into place when you feel comfortable reading and decoding and forming your own opinions. So that same thing, we have a literacy scope. In the first couple of weeks, we're doing the assessment data and some teachers are taking class time to make sure that they're giving students these assessments to make sure we can place them either in accelerated reading programs or SIPS programs, learning phonetics, making sure that our PD beginning of the school year is making sure that teachers really understand what reading protocols are. And so we take our 3 big priorities and we just map them out for those first 6 weeks. Is how we approach it.
So why 6 weeks? I gotta ask, is there
Mhm.
something special about 6? Why not 8, 10?
Yeah, good question. The way that we break down the times here in OUSD is in marking periods. So you have 2 semesters, right? Your fall and your spring semester, and then you have 6 marking periods total. So each marking period is 6 weeks long. So that's after the first 6 weeks is when grades come out. That's when you're getting a sense of like where the school is moving. In the first 4 weeks of school, there can be a lot of student movement. And so by 6 weeks, your classes and everything is set. Teachers have a good sense of where they're going. The coaching team has been able to do a few instructional rounds of observations. So after 6 weeks, we have a pretty good sense of how did the school year start? Are
Mm.
we on the right note? Are we hitting the metrics that we want? Our student experience survey goes out, our staff experience survey goes out so we can reflect on, yep, people are feeling great. They're feeling motivated. They're feeling engaged. Or, oh, yep, here's where there's some pain points. We're still seeing some issues here with students issue, or this teacher is actually still struggling. And so let's make sure that we assign a coach to that teacher to make sure that they're really moving through some things. So you don't have to wait for the
Got it.
6th week to do all these, but within those 6 weeks, I've found you can generally identify where are serious issues happening or where are great strengths, or are we on pace to meet some of our big goals.
It almost
Yeah.
sounds like these 6 weeks give you a window into how the whole academic year is gonna pan out for the school.
Yeah. At least the first semester.
Got
And it
it.
went pretty well. Like we executed very well in our first 6 weeks this school year, and we had a really strong fall semester. One of the things that we're talking about now is how do we recreate that in January? Our community goes through lots of things. Sometimes families move out, or sometimes they have to, all these different things can happen to families. And it seems like it happens a lot around the holidays in December. So one of our big goals is how do we recreate this urgency in the first 6 weeks in December and January to make sure we're doing it? Because we did a great job this past school year.
Mm.
We met our attendance goals, met our goals around making sure when our like literacy groups and interventions are starting. So next year we're going to do a similar thing with math. So in addition to testing just basic reading skills, we'll be doing numeracy testing to see which students need to be in intervention programs so we can really have some of the same success we had with basic literacy skills with fundamental math.
Got it. And just to use a basketball analogy, it's like your first 6 weeks feels like almost like the first quarter of the game, right? You got to make sure that you start the game strong,
Yeah.
you build the right momentum for the rest of the year, and then you just keep building on it. And when you think about it that way, what does success look like at the end of week 6 for last year? And then like, how does that compare to what you're planning for the new year?
I'll just speak for ourselves. What are the metrics? What are the priorities that we set out for ourselves? So what are the big things that we go through with teachers is identifying what are our big priorities. We have this document. We have like our instructional priorities. We want to make sure that 75% of teachers are hitting a level 3 on our IPG. I'm just throwing a lot of edu talk out there, but
Yeah.
we have our own walkthrough guides. When we're going through classrooms, we're looking for these standard aligned teaching moves. And so if we're seeing these, we know we're in good shape. If we're seeing that we're like falling short on like checking for understanding, or if we're not using grade level text, often enough, or if we're not having enough like student talk engagement protocols, those are big flags for us to be like, all right, we actually need to shift our PD calendar in the next cycle to actually really address, maybe it's checking for understanding. Or if we're seeing a certain population of students not coming to school or falling off, that's what we make sure like already, that's why we had these students last year. We were to put them on attendance contracts to start the year. Or we're making sure we're inviting families in to join some of our family groups who might have been struggling last year to make sure we start the year really strong. And then we can see in 6 weeks, is that intervention working or do we need to pivot?
Right.
It's just like basketball, injuries and all sorts of things can happen, that our teachers get sick or there's deaths in families, all sorts of things. This is a human business at the end of the day, and human beings, all sorts of things happen. And so you still need to have your pulse checks
Yeah.
really consistently. And so depending on what the metrics are, what the thing that is successful. So again, for us, we really want to make sure that all of our reading groups were up and running and by the 5th/6th week of the school year.
Yeah.
We really wanted to make sure that we had our chronic attendance down to 15, 20%, which is not great, but which is a huge improvement for us as a school. So we're trying to make these SMART goals that are realistic. And so we can check ourselves along the way on these various metrics. So we haven't developed this for next school year, but we have our Castlemont school-wide priorities. So our first page of this is around instruction. So one of our big indicators of progress is that 75% of students who are multiple years below grade level make at least 2+ years of growth. So they call that stretch growth. And we measure that 3 times a year through the iReady tool. So again, we want to make sure that if students are multiple years below, we want to make sure that they grow at least 2+ years. And so we'll know that, but not until the end of the year. And some of those things we can see with our initial iReady. Another thing for math, like math was a big growth area. So we wanted to make sure at least 25% of students were demonstrating proficiency. Again, not the number that we want to shoot for long term. Ideally, this is up to 80, 90%. But based on some numbers where we're coming from, this felt like a really realistic goal. So we created this in tandem with our math department. And then you have instructional walkthrough data, and then you have some of our aligned actions. So some of the things we want to do is develop our reading intervention team. So next year, we'll probably keep a similar type aligned action to this reading intervention team, but we'll probably pivot a little bit of maybe we're adding in 3 more cohorts of students, or maybe we're hiring 1 more reading intervention specialist to continue to expand.
Cool. And I'm just gonna pause for quick questions and like to discuss this sheet because I really like how it's laid out. You have a big goal, which is I think it's structured in a like smart way, right? So you have, I know there are audio listeners to this podcast as well, so I'm not going to be able to see this, but you have this vision that says we have meaningful and rigorous learning opportunities. And what does that mean to you, right? So all students must have access to high quality, rigorous, and engaging and meaningful instruction, focusing on literacy, critical thinking, social and emotional skills, prepared to succeed in college. I think you structured not only the goal itself, but also the why behind the goal. Like, why is this important to us? Why is this important to our kid?
Yeah.
And then you have the indicators of progress, which is where in the SMART framework, this is the measurables, right? This is the stuff that you're looking at, which is great. And then what I think you've gone beyond the SMART framework is because this is applied to the whole team, is like, what are the actions that we're taking together as an instructional team that are aligned with this? And how the way I'm thinking about this is that if I'm on your staff and I'm doing something that's outside these aligned actions, I need to be questioning myself. Am I contributing to this goal or not?
Yeah. And that's a great point. You come back to the question of priorities. Not everything can be a priority because that is not what that's not what the word means. And so that can sometimes be tough with teachers of, no, I still want to support you doing XYZ thing, but I want to ask you, does that lend itself to either improving attendance and engagement, promoting literacy, or engaging students and families? If it doesn't do one of those 3 things, I'm not going to be able to support you as much directly. But if you can figure out your rationale, your why, how it's going to contribute to one of those main big buckets, I have your back. I'm going to ride for you. And and those are some of the things we have to just say, hey, sorry, that's not our main priority for this year. We can maybe look at that next year.
And how many of these do you have? Is because once you get to 9 priorities or 13 priorities, you're just everything's a priority.
So again, was our first 6 weeks plan from this school year. And again, really fundamental: attendance, literacy, and engaging school culture for students and families. And so you have these things like, what are staff doing week 0 before school starts? What do we want families to be doing? How do students live into this? Then you go into week 1. What are they doing? Staff, families, students. So what are each things that each kind of constituent should be doing?
I'll just describe that to the audio listeners, right? You have basically each week is on this table, and then you have columns for staff, families, and students that indicate tasks, things that have to be done, as well as almost like results, like what you're hoping to see from each group. And it's almost like a list of accountabilities, I would say. Would that be fair to say? Per column that you have for each group of students, each group of stakeholders in school. And I love it. It's super clear. If I'm on your staff, I would look at, all right, we're in week 1. What do I need to do? And then if I'm a new staff, even I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I just come back to Blasher's sheet and I go, this is what I need to do week 1. That's all I need to worry about. And then this is what the families need to do. This is what my students are expected to do. And this is what I should tell my students that they're expected to do.
Yep, that's exactly right. Hey, team, we want to make sure that we're all aligned on cell phone policy. That's why we're going over the norms of cell phone policy in week 1. And you're going to do it again in week 2. And we're going to go over it in advisory classes. And that's why we're going to work as a whole school to make sure that how are we teaching responsible use of cell phones, right? We're really trying, and not to go too down that rabbit hole right now, but yeah, for each of our things, we try to have really clear documentation because it's overwhelming. And that's, again, part of why we try to do some of that work at the end of the school year to just give people a heads up of what's to come and share some of these documents. For those of you that want to look at them, here they are, but they will be reminders at every staff meeting, PD. We're always trying to bring things back to these main big foci.
Yeah. So another question I have is, you've got this document which covers the 6-week plan, and then you have the other document which covers, I guess that's for the whole year, what is the big rocks that you're going after. How many of these documents, if I'm a teacher, that I would have to refer to? I ask that because it seems like
Yeah.
there's pretty clear cut. There's one that covers for the whole year, and then one that covers for the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And if it were just these two, I feel like, all right, I'm in good shape. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there like more that you have?
That's a great question. And simplicity and coherence are a big goals for us next year. Continuing to make sure that like things just feel really coherent, that things aren't all over the place, right? How do you make sure that the message is staying on point? And so, yeah, these are our two kind of main documents to start the school year. We try to make sure that we come back to this every staff meeting, this priorities thing that I have up. So now we're on like kind of the culture page of it. And some of this we try to frame it like not everybody is holding everything. So when we go into PD and we're talking about attendance, teachers, you're not the one that has to hold attendance contracts. You're not doing home visits. You're not setting kids up on SART or SARB contracts. But you should know what your daily attendance looks like. Your job is to make sure you take attendance accurately and consistently. Make sure that you're doing our routines of greeting students at the door and making sure that there's a really engaging, welcoming environment. That's your job. And this is our job. We just want to let you know what we're doing to support what you do in your classroom. Culture team, I don't need you to know exactly what each teacher is doing in their classroom, but you need to know how to use our Minga app so that if students are coming late to school, that they know where they should be reporting to, or the system, if they come in late, where they need to go. Or if a student is on your caseload, case manager, have you called that family yet and checked in with the student to see if they're all right so that the teacher doesn't have to do all of that work as well? So it's really, we try to map it out. What are all the things that happen? And then what we really do is, what's the piece of your pie? What's your thing? What's what you need to do to make sure that everything is whole? And as principals and admin, we need to know what all the things are so that we can course correct or support. So yeah, this can be overwhelming. These documents can be overwhelming. But we try to make sure that they are the priority. So we always share back at staff meetings, what's our suspension data looking like? What's our attendance data looking like? What's our reading data or some of our writing data looking like? And just keep it to those main three things. This is what we're shifting right now. Oh, this is why we're doing our April and May attendance challenge, because we noticed a little dip amongst these groups. So that's why we're going to have this. We got these gift cards donated to us. So we're doing this thing for everybody who's got 95% attendance. So we get these shifts that not everybody needs to do, but this just to be aware of.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. So you do these little sprints or challenges when you find that things are maybe not completely on track. And you have these little interventions that you run at the school level to see if you can pull things back up. How often do you hold your staff meetings? Because I'm thinking in this 6-week period, you might have maybe 3 staff meetings.
Yeah, that's about right. We have one staff meeting each month.
Okay. And so that doesn't give you a lot of time to course correct. If you're in a 6-week window, you might have 1 or 2 staff meetings. Is there a way that in between you're like able to say, all right, this thing's not working well? Or do you feel like this 6 weeks is pretty much you set it up and then it runs and there's not much you can do about it, but at the end of the 6 weeks, you can course correct for the next 6 weeks? How do you think about that?
Yeah, and that comes into the structures and planning that you've created at your school. And so that's another huge piece. Sometimes principals will get to the end of the year and be like, I really need to restructure the way that this thing works. And so we have department meetings. So every English teacher is part of a department, is part of the English department. And they meet weekly. Like we meet every Wednesday, and it's for professional development. So in addition to our like monthly staff meeting, you have your PDs, your professional development on Wednesdays. And so that affords time to make changes and things. Typically the first month of the school year, we really focus more on like restorative practices, creating a warm and welcoming environment. And so our PD is based around that. We might do like an empathy interview where teachers are interviewing a student, just how's your experience so far? How do you feel like you engage with this type of classroom material? And so that gives us some basic understandings. And so we don't have to wait every 6 weeks. So you're doing these different shifts. Similarly, we have grade level teams, right? And they meet every week during their prep period. And to do that, we have to make sure we created our master schedule so that everybody who's in our 9th grade academy or 12th grade or international or SUDA or Che Academy, they all have a common prep period. So they meet once a week.
Got it.
That's where you can do additional things where I'm like, hey, y'all, we noticed in our last walkthrough that not everybody in the team is like greeting people at the door. Like a little small thing, but like our coaching team was doing observations this week and we noticed that people aren't greeting at the door and only 3 out of 10 of people had a really engaging warm-up. So can y'all make sure you're sharing best practices about engaging warm-ups, make sure you're greeting people at the door. So we don't have to wait every 6 weeks. There's these much smaller intervals and little cycles that you can do in between those times.
Got it. Now we have maybe time to dive in a little bit into what an empathy interview looks like. Like, where did this concept come from? I find it really interesting. And how do you train teachers and staff to do these interviews?
Part of it starts with the why, like we talked about. Why do I care what my students think? If that's your stance, then we need to do some coaching work about what your job is. We are public servants. These students are our clients. We serve them. We want to make sure that they're being successful. And so most teachers get that. Most people who are in education like understand that. There's a few people who we have to like do some coaching around. But yeah, we have a whole professional development session around what is an empathy interview? How do you hold it? How do you build that rapport with the student just so that they'll even be open with you? Because building relationships is a big piece, right? We use a culture responsive teaching as a backbone and the idea of a warm demander. So we do PD around what does that look like and how do you get to a place where students will open up? Because you as a teacher need to know your students, how they engage. Some of them have different learning modalities. Some of them have IEPs or they're language learners. So we do spend some time with teachers just making sure you know who your students are. And then if we're finding that students are getting Ds or Fs or Cs, we do what's called the DF protocol. And teachers look at their data. How many of my students are getting Ds and Fs? So we do a deep dive into it. Okay, why do they do this? So we can do this after the first 6 weeks. You can see, okay, why are some students having this experience or having this output? Let's take some time to interview a few of them so they can see, oh, this is what is helping you succeed. Or maybe this is an issue that, oh, you're having trouble getting to school because you have to take your little brother or there's issues at home. So it helps us unpack a lot of information. Maybe we need to do a cost referral and refer this student to therapy, or this student is suffering from this thing, or this student needs clothing from a community closet, or sometimes it's like really basic fundamental things, but maybe it's, oh, this student actually might have some kind of cognitive processing issues. Maybe we need to do a SST circle where the teachers come around and work with the student and family to understand what the need is. So we spend time training up the empathy interviews, and that helps teachers understand what are some trends going on in their classrooms and what are some, again, little small tweaks that you can make in lifetime instead of waiting for the semester grades to come out.
That's great. And so it sounds like the empathy interview, it's not like a regular expectation on the teachers. It's something that ad hoc. Maybe I can even call it like a mini intervention, maybe a tier 2 intervention.
Yeah, it's definitely like a tier 2 intervention. I guess we use it more as like a tier 1 thing though, because we use it as a temp check before, right after we do our DF protocols. Like after the marking period, we try to look at grades and just see where people's standing. And then we want to do these empathy interviews to make sure we understand why is a student having this outcome or this experience. And so we do use it as a little tweak. And if we need to support teachers more, we definitely do.
And this is done like by the teachers, right? Not by the counselor or psychologist. Like the teacher, basically, they've got that rapport already with the student. So it's easier for them to have that interview.
Yeah. And some teachers need a little bit more support with how to hold those conversations. And we're there to help. Sometimes we take a video. This year, I think, what do we do? I've done it in the past. We'll take a video of me conducting an empathy interview with a student just to model of what it can look like and feel like. And that led to one of our PD cycles around collaboration. One of the things that came out of it, I won't go too far into it. I know we're shorter on time. One of the things that came out, we found this trend amongst our empathy interviews is that some students don't feel comfortable like they know the answers. So that's why sometimes they don't participate in class engagement activities. So it wasn't the like structure or the protocol of the teacher's activity. It was more the like affective or the like the SEL component in the classroom. So some of the teachers were like, oh, I need to do more positive narration or like a warm call and let that student know, oh, this is a great idea. Will you please share that out? And so we were seeing some of those students engage in the protocol. So it wasn't a like technical thing, it was an adaptive problem. And so that just helps teachers know, instead of just, oh, I just need to use this protocol or this teaching strategy. It actually wasn't any of those. It was, did the student feel safe and comfortable? Did they feel confident in themselves? And so those are some interesting things that led us in our literacy PD, because speaking about the text or whatever is a part of literacy for us. That helped us inform a next professional development cycle.
Yeah, I get it. And it sounds like if you're listening to this and not using it in your school, it's something that I think you should absolutely think of picking up. And on that note, Joseph, as we come to the end of this episode, many of us are going to start a new school year really soon.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that you'd recommend another site principal to try so that they can set themselves up and set their team up and set their students up to start the year on a strong note, what would that be if they could just do it tomorrow?
Yeah. And that's a really tough question because there's no one thing. Obviously, be prepared. What does that mean? A big thing that's helped me and our team is knowing our data streams and knowing your data. We really try to be data informed. We just talked about empathy interviews. That's a form of qualitative data that helps us make decisions. Student experience surveys, that helps us know where students engage. Again, that's our end user. So we really try to be a design thinking school because that's part of our SUDA pathway. And so if a principal doesn't have a really clear sense of what their data streams are, what their data is, I would spend time doing that to make sure what are your priorities and what is your information telling you? Because otherwise you're going blind or you're experimenting without intention and focus.
I love that. And no surprise, I'm a bit of a data nerd myself. So like it's very easy for me to promote and say, yes, do know your data streams. But I think it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to be flying blind. You want to be making informed decisions. Qualitative data is just as important as quantitative data, which is exactly what you're saying.
And I would just, if I could say one thing, I think sometimes people can get glazed over with too much quantitative data, right? These are people. They're not just numbers. And so that's what we have to continue to pull on. Like, I think that's part of what motivates people is when we get into the qualitative or anecdotal information. When we bring students into PD, they're in their first year of college and they tell teachers like, I felt really prepared in this teacher's class, but I didn't, or other people will say, I did not feel ready for college. That hits teachers in a really impactful way. And that's student data telling us, are we preparing them for the next part of their adventure?
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the biggest things is, nope, this is why you need to have really rigorous assignments. Don't come up with stuff just because your kids are complaining it's too hard. You have to do that because we want them to be ready to do the thing, whatever it is, the job or college. And so student data that they're speaking right in front of your face is qualitative, anecdotal data that you want to use.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing so generously today, Joseph. You held nothing back. I love the plans that you've shared today, but also the method that went behind that planning that many of us listening would be able to take a leaf or two as we think about the new school year. So that's all for the show today. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and passion, and I'll see you in the next episode. And that's a wrap on today's Principal Office Hours. Before you rush off to put out the next school emergency, take 2 seconds to subscribe. It's way easier than getting your budget approved. And if you liked what you heard, head over to principalofficehours.com to sign up for weekly updates on the show. Also, the best compliment would be to tell your friends about us, especially the ones who look like they need therapy or a career change. We're going to be back with fresh principal insights and inspiration every week. Until then, keep being the leader that your ID badge says that you are. See you next time.